Welcome back to Drafting with Mark, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at creating this drawing, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make this one all metric, right? So if that's something that you're really interested in, and the reason I'm doing this is because a good percentage of my audience is not strictly from the United States. Let's go ahead and take a look at kind of some behind the scenes stuff on YouTube. So on here you can see that the United States does represent 16% of my audience, which means that the rest of my audience is coming from, or my views actually I should say, are coming from other countries. You know, most of these countries might be on the ISO standard or the international standard, right? And most of the drawings that I've created so far have been in the kind of imperial state, which means that I'm using the third angle projection. This one, I'm going to create this one, and then I'm going to try to put things in the first angle projection. Now, what that's going to mean to you, as far as when you see me create this, is that this is going to be my front view, right? This is my top view, but it actually will not be located on the top. It's going to be on the bottom, right? So the front view is going to be up here at the top, and then my top view will be here at the bottom, right? So if we're starting to take a look at doing things on the ISO standard, just remember that they use first angle projection. Here in the United States, we're going to use a third angle projection. So that's going to be the major difference. This drawing here is created in a third angle projection. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now with that being said, let's jump over to AutoCAD and start setting AutoCAD up to work in millimeters. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my template, right? And the way we're going to do that is I will select the new icon here at the top. And when I select that, it should open up a dialog box. And these are the templates, right? By default, it is set to the AutoCAD DWT template, right? This is nothing more than the imperial or inches. It's kind of set up in inches. The one that we're going to be using for millimeters is going to be the AutoCAD ISO.dwt. This is going to tell AutoCAD that, hey, he's going to be working in millimeters as opposed to working in inches, right? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'll go ahead and select this template. Go ahead and hit OK. Now the next thing I'm going to do is just to kind of verify that is I'm going to select the word create here. And when I create, it's going to open up a dialog box. And here's kind of one of those things that we'll check. So if I was using the other template, it would say inches here. You can see here it does say millimeters. Let's go ahead and hit cancel. And so now we're telling AutoCAD, hey, we're using millimeters. All right. Now let's go ahead and do our typical standard stuff that we always do. I always turn my grid off. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn my ortho on. And then I'll check the running O snaps that I have available to me. So these are going to be my current running O snaps. All right. So like I said, I'm going to kind of draw this using the third angle projection, but when I go to start setting this up for the drawing, I will put it in a first angle projection layout. Okay, so let's start off by creating this. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a circle, center radius. I'll go ahead and select it here. I can put that at 0, 0, but I'm going to kind of just put it in a arbitrary location, right? The radius of this one should be 20. Let's kind of zoom into this, and you can already see that because this is set up in millimeters, when I typed in that 20, usually if I was in inches, that would be really big. But since I'm using millimeters, it understands that 20 is really not that large when you're talking about millimeters. All right, let's go ahead and put our other points on here. So I'm going to go back to the circle, center radius command. I'm going to hover over here, and I'm going to touch. Do not click on this center. And then what I'm going to do is move my cursor right to the outside of this, trying not to touch any other O snaps, and then I'll get my green tracking line, right? So I'll type in a distance of 30. So I'm to the right of it at a distance of 30. And then let's go ahead and type in our radius, which is going to be 10. All right. So this is the exact same thing on the other side, so no need to kind of work with that. I'm just going to kind of finish this out here a little bit. I'll go ahead and put a circle. This time make it a center diameter. I'll go to this center. Go ahead and click here and give it a diameter of 31.3. Let's go back to circle center diameter. Let's go find the center here. Let's click here, and this one has a diameter of 20. All right, Now let's go ahead and kind of work on our smaller circle here. Let's go back to circle center diameter. I'll go ahead and select this center here. This one has a diameter of 15. And then one more circle center diameter at this center. And this one has a diameter of 10. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create some lines, right? So I'll draw a line, shift right click. I'm going to choose tangent, right? So I'm going to go from tangent. I'll select a tangent location here. Now I'm just clicking somewhere in this area. So do a left click here, shift and right click again and go to tangent. And then select somewhere along here. Go ahead and hit escape. Now I'm going to use the mirror command to kind of finish the rest of this, right? So I'm going to use mirror. I'm going to highlight all of this. Go ahead and hit enter. And I'm just going to click on this quadrant, going down to this quadrant. Go ahead and hit enter after that, right? Next, let's go ahead and mirror this again. So go back to the mirror command. This time only select this line and this line. Go ahead and hit enter on that. I'm going to use this center, going right across to this center. All right. So now that I have this completed, let's go ahead and trim. So I'll use the trim command. And I'll just go ahead and trim off all of this. And since this is kind of the first time that I'm doing a metric drawing, I will kind of go really slow on this one and kind of show you all the commands. All right, so the top of this is done. And like I said, I can create this in an ISO, but it's easier for me to work in third angle projection and then get things back to where they need to be. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start working here at the bottom. So I'm going to draw a line going straight across here. And what I'm doing with this line is I'm making sure that it extends past this edge and this edge. So that's kind of the basis of when I'm going to create this line. Go ahead and use the offset command. Give it a distance of 3. And I'll offset this line going up. Let's go ahead and escape out of that. Go back to the offset command. Give it a distance of 10. And I'll offset this going down. All right, so let's escape out of that. And now, depending on what you want to work with, this is kind of the next area. If you can see both of these, you can put a lot of lines on here. Otherwise, you can just kind of keep it simple. But I think I'm only going to use a few lines, so I'm going to use the construction line command. I'll select vertical. And what I'm going to select is this midpoint, this quadrant, going to the outside of this quadrant. Keep working here and here. And I'll work on these two quadrants. So I'm here, here, and then finally this midpoint on the outside. All right. The way I like to usually do this is with the fillet command, because fillet is going to save me from having to do some of this other stuff later. And this is kind of really neat way that I'm going to use fillet to kind of complete this whole entire setup here at the bottom. So let's go to fillet. Let's check on the radius. The radius is at 0. So go ahead and hit enter. And then I have multiple. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this outside rectangle, right? I'm going to go ahead and create this. So I'm selecting the sides of the line that I want to keep. So I want to keep this side of this line, and I'm selecting here. And that's the way fillet is going to work. So I'm just going to keep selecting on the sides that I want to keep. All right. So we have our basic rectangle created, right? Let's go ahead and start working here along the top. And I know that I have these lines here. Let's go ahead and put this one all the way here, and then we'll come back later and trim these off. But I'm going to kind of shorten these right now. And all I'm doing is selecting these and walking them back this way. All right. And then let's go ahead and do a little bit more trimming with these. I'm going to take care of these underlines, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did before. So I'm just going to kind of walk these back this direction. Right up, and it looks like I accidentally got out of the command. Let's go back to fillet, multiple, and what I was doing here is selecting this line, and I'm just kind of keeping it going this direction, right? And we got one more to do, well, a couple of more here. All right, so now we have all of that created. Let's go ahead and trim in between those. Let's go ahead and escape out of this, go to trim. And then we're going to select what we don't want. So I'm just trimming between here and here. Alright, so at that point, this is created. Zoom down a little bit, and I'm just going to copy these 4 lines down. So go to the copy command, start a little bitty window here. Let's click on the other side here. Enter, pick a base point here, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to tell it the distance, which is going to be 20. Select there. And it looks like it only went down 10 actually. Yeah, because I selected this top line. Let's go ahead and move this down another 10. So I'll go to the move command, select here, and come down another 10. If I would have done that correctly, I wasn't thinking about it when I created this. When I copied that, I should have copied it from this endpoint, and it should have went down an additional 30, because I should have took in consideration the distance between here is 20, and that height there is 10. But overall, the distance between here should be 20, right? Let's go ahead and put a couple of more construction lines back in here. So go to construction line, vertical. And this time I'll use the centers, right? So I'll use this center here, and then this center. Let's go to the offset command again. This time I'm going to put in half of the distance, what I need. So it's going to be 5, enter. And then I'll select this line here, and I'm just going to kind of do this on the outside lines here. Alright, and so once you're done there, now these lines are actually the double of them, so I can select that line and offset it here, and then select this one again and offset, going back to this one time and then another time, right? Let's go ahead and escape out of this. Let's go ahead and use the erase command, and the lines I will get rid of is going to be that one, these 3 here in the middle, and then this one here on the end. Okay, let's go ahead and erase those lines. And now finally I just need to trim in between those two. So I'll go to the trim command. I'll select the word cutting edge. I'll use this top line and this bottom line. Go ahead and hit enter. And then what I'll use is just a left click here, and then go right across here and left click. Same thing at the top, one left click here, go straight across and another left click, right? Alright, so now we have that done. Go ahead and escape out of that. And like I said, we have all of this created. Next thing I need to do is I can go ahead and create the section of this, right? So what I'll do is I'll simply copy this portion from this endpoint, and I'm just going to copy that down here. And now we'll start taking a look at what the internals on this looks like, right? So the first thing I know is that this whole piece here at the bottom is one piece. So I'll go ahead and make sure I solidify that now by selecting and just trimming right in between that. And now my bottom piece is actually created, right? So the only thing I need to do now is figure out what those gaps is. Those gaps are located with these inside circles here. So let's go back to the vertical of the construction line there. So once I select that, I want you to go and select the word vertical. And go ahead and select these quadrants. Alright, so once you're done with that, next thing I need to do is go ahead and trim these, right? And I know that these stop actually here at the bottom here, and they're actually the same size line as these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to my advantage when I go to trim. If I try to trim from here and without using cutting lines, I will have double lines in between here. So I'm going to use the trim command. I'll select the cutting lines. I'll use this top line here. And I'll go ahead and select all 3 of them. And then I'll also use this bottom line here. Go ahead and hit enter. And like we did before, one simple left click here, go right across. And then come down here at the bottom, a left click here, and go right across. Let's go ahead and escape out of this. Go back to the trim command. And all we're doing here is trimming between these 2 portions, right? So I'll do the exact same thing here. Start off by trimming there, and right in between here and here. I'll escape out of that. Alright, so I'm going to leave this alone for now. I'll go ahead and put the hatches on later. But for right now, all of my drafting work is done. Let's go ahead and move this. I'll start from this endpoint and go down to this endpoint. Let's go back to the move command. So move. And I want to reselect that without selecting these other lines. So I'll just select, type in P, and that P stands for previous. Go ahead and hit enter. Select the base point after you hit enter. Kind of drag it over a little bit. And then now I'm just going to use M enter just to move all of this again. Okay. All right, so now we have that created. Let's go ahead and start taking a look at drawing the isometric, right? So I'm still going to create the isometric, and it will still behave the same no matter if you're using ISO standards or the imperial standards, right? Or ANSI standards is another way of saying that. So let's start working on the isometric, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is switch AutoCAD over to isometric. The way we do that is we select this icon here, and then I'll go ahead and kind of flop between them. You can also use the function key F5, or you can select the fly up next to it, and I'm going to be on isometric top. First thing I'm going to do is create an ISO circle. Remember, we have to type in EL, that stands for the ellipse. And then I'll go ahead and click a base point, which is here. And then I want to tell it, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't go to the ISO circle point. Let's escape out of that. EL, enter. And then I have to type in I, enter, to tell it I want to create an ISO circle. Select here. This one has a radius of 20. Go ahead and hit enter. I'll go ahead and draw a line from this center going this direction at 30. I can use the tracking off of that, but sometimes it's easier just to draw these lines. I'll draw another line from this endpoint going that direction at 30. Now I'm using the L enter as opposed to going up there and selecting line. Sometimes it's a lot easier to work that way. Let's go back and create a couple of ISO circles. So it's going to be EL enter, I enter. Select this endpoint here, and this one has a radius of 10. Exact same thing on the other side here. So we can go ahead and copy this circle. I'll use grip since that'll make it faster. Go ahead and select your ISO circle. Select the center grip. Select the word copy on your command line here. And then pick that endpoint there. Alright, the next thing I need to do now is go ahead and kind of create those tangent points. If I try to draw a line, let's see, will this actually work? And I shift and right click and choose tangent. And you'll see that these ISO circles do not give me a tangent point, right? So the way that we're going to create that is we're going to have to refer back to our normal drawing here to get some distances from us. So let's go back to here. And then I'll use a distance from this center over to that endpoint here. So I'm just going to use a regular distance by using the linear. I'll find the center of this one, click on this one, and then go find that endpoint here, click on that, and come up. Now this is an ISO standard, so you're seeing that's why you see a comma behind this. But you can see that that is actually 3.333 and it's repeating forever. The way you can kind of represent that is in a fraction, so that's 3 1/3, right? Let's go ahead and take a look and see what this one is. So back to the linear. Let's go find this center. And then let's go find this center. And click here. You can see that this one says 6.666 and it has a repeating 6 behind it. So this is going to be 6 2/3. So that's the way I'm going to represent those to get them as accurate as possible on my isometric drawing here. So let's go back to the isometric. Let's draw some lines from this center going up. And I'm going to do this 2 more times. So I'm just going to draw a line from each one of these centers going up. One more line. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy. And I'm using CO, or you can use this icon here. I want to copy this line. I'm trying to, should I do both of them? Nah, let's do one of them because I'm going to have to wind up deleting the line. Let's go back to copy. I'll select this line here, hit enter, pick a base point here. I'm going to aim this direction, and remember that this is 3 1/3. So the way we represent that in a fraction form is 3, and then you would hit the minus 1 divided by 3. Right? So that's going to be our 3 1/3. Go ahead and escape that. Go to this side and do the exact same thing. So I'm going to use copy. Select this line here, enter, pick a base point, aim that direction, 3 minus 1 divided by 3. That is 3 1/3. This is going to be 6 2/3. So let's go back to the copy command. Select this line here. Enter. I'm just going to pick a base point somewhere out here. I'll aim this direction and type in 6 minus 2 divided by 3. Enter. And I'll come this direction and then type in 6 minus 2 divided by 3 as well. Go ahead and hit escape. Let's go ahead and delete some of these lines here. Also go ahead and get rid of these center lines. Alright, next I need to extend these lines, right? So let's use the extend command. I'll use extend here. And I'll just extend these lines right down to these endpoints. Alright, escape out of that. Let's go ahead and trim off the top portion. You don't have to do this, but it'll make it a lot easier just to select those endpoints. Okay, so once you got that all trimmed, let's use the line command, and then we're just going to connect endpoints to endpoints. So line, find that endpoint, go to that endpoint, right? It looks like it missed it. Let me hit the undo that's actually in the command here, and go up to that endpoint. So escape out of that. Go back to the line command. I just typed in L enter. I'll go from that endpoint to that endpoint. Escape. L enter. This endpoint to this endpoint. Escape. And this time I'll just hit the enter button to repeat the line command as well. So I'll go from that endpoint to this endpoint. Alright, so now we have that created. Let's go ahead and start deleting some of these lines in the middle. And then we'll use the trim command. And this will help get rid of the rest of the stuff. So let's use trim. Alright, escape out of that. Now you see that we have created that shape in an isometric view. Let's go ahead and copy this down a distance of 10. So I'll use the copy command. I have to switch out of isometric top, and I can use either one of these other ones that I want. So I'll go ahead and use the isometric left. I'll copy all of this, pick a base point here, come down a distance of 10. Go ahead and escape. I'll draw a line, and this time I will use these quadrants. So from that quadrant to that one, escape out of this, go back to the line command, and then I'll create it from this quadrant to this quadrant. Let's go back and use the trim command and get rid of all the extra lines that's going around here at the bottom. Alright, so now we have that done, and this is what I was referring to before. I'll copy this down a distance of 30. So go back to the copy command, highlight all of this, go ahead and select enter, aim down a distance of 30. Okay, so I'm going to leave these lines in the back for now. Let's go ahead and put these centers on the inside, right? Let's switch back to the isometric top. Type in EL, enter, I enter, find the center here, click, and then give it a radius, right? But we need that in a diameter. So go ahead and select the word diameter on your command line, and then type in 10. Let's go to the center one here. So EL, enter, I enter, go touch this center, kind of give a little preview of it, and I'll just type in D, enter, as opposed to going down and selecting on my command line. Then I'll type in 20. That D stands for diameter, right? So the exact same thing here on the other side, or I can just copy this. Just like we did before, use the grips. I'll select the ISO circle here, select the center, go to the word copy, and then I'll find the center over here, and then I'll click on that center. Escape out of that. Okay. Next, I need to draw some lines going up. So let's switch to isometric left again. Let's use the line command. So L, enter. Go find the quadrant here and go straight up. I like to run it just a little bit past this line here. Go back to the line command, and I'll run it straight up here. To speed things up a little bit, let's go ahead and copy that line. So I'll choose copy, select this line here, enter. find the quadrant, and then just go find the quadrants on your other two circles. So that quadrant and this quadrant here. Now, if this quadrant is on the inside of this line, which it is, I can actually omit that one. I don't need it. Let's go ahead and hit escape. And then let's go ahead and kind of trim this out and finish this bottom portion. So let's use trim. We'll trim here. This circle kind of wraps around here underneath. And then you can see that none of this will be shown. So I'll go ahead and start working that way. Let's go ahead and trim this portion off. Let's walk around here, take that off. Let's zoom in. You can see that we do have a little portion in there. Kind of come back here, trim off this line here. Just kind of further walking this one back. Alright, I'll trim here and here, get rid of this portion here, and that tells me that this portion will not be seen as it will be behind that. Okay, so let's escape out of that. Now you can see that that portion is done. Let's go ahead and put our last circles here along the top. Switch back to isometric top. Let's go ahead and draw a few ellipses here. So EL, enter, I enter. Go and find the center here. This one has a diameter of 31.3. So D enter, 31.3. Go back to EL, I enter. I'll click this one. This one has a diameter of 15. Let's go back to EL, enter, I enter. Come to this one, click here, give it a diameter. And now that I'm thinking about it, actually, I won't see this one. So let's go ahead and leave that one off for now. Let's go ahead and escape out of that. Let's copy this one. So I'll copy that circle from, let's go find the center here, click that center, and then go place it on the center that's located on the other side. Alright, next I need to copy these up a height of 3. So I have to switch out of isometric top. Let's go back to isometric left. Let's select these 3. Copy. Pick a base point here. Go up a distance of 3. Escape. Kind of like we did before here is I'll draw a line going from this quadrant, going straight up to that quadrant, right? Escape out of that. I'll select that vertical line I have. I'll go to copy. Pick a base point, which is located here. And then I'm just going to put them at each one of these quadrants. And you can see along this side, it might get a little bit. Okay. Okay, so now we can start trimming. I'll use the trim command, and as my cutting edges, so select that. Go ahead and select all of these little bitty vertical lines that you created, right? Some of them may be hard to see, and you can use a blue window. That means that I'll left click here and come to the right and left click above it, right? So it'll select only that one. Once again, using that same little trick here, I'm just left clicking to the left of it and dragging a window to the right. So one simple left click, come to the right of it, do a left click, right? Go ahead and hit enter. Then you're going to trim off all of those inside portions here. Let's escape out of this. Let's go ahead and get rid of this part on the back. Let's go back to the trim command. And then we're going to get rid of that portion that's going around it. Let's go ahead and put the circles that go through it. So we're going to switch back to the isometric top. And then we'll go ahead and type in EL, enter, I enter. I'll start with my big one here. So I'll find the center of that top ellipse. And this one has a diameter of 20. So D, enter, 20, enter. Back to the ellipse command, right? So EL, enter, I enter. Find that center. Click on the center of the top one. Kind of preview it. It's a diameter, so D, enter, 10. And I can do the same, or I can copy the one over again. I'll just go ahead and do it again. So EL, enter, I enter, find the center, click on that center, give it a preview, de-enter, and then type in 10. All right, so now you can see that that isometric is completed, and now we can start kind of dealing with the drafting phase of this. And we're going to be using, let's say, an A3 size title block. So I'll get you the dimensions for an A3 title block. Okay, so if you did any kind of Google searching, you will find that an A size is mostly equivalent to a B size in our imperial units, which is a 17 by 11, right? So the one that I will be using is going to be an A3, right? So this A3, the inches measurement is close to a 17 by 11, right? But here are the dimensions that we're going to be using to create this. Now, if I use these numbers, this is going to be in a portrait format. We're going to switch that over to a landscape. So the numbers that I'm going to use is going to be 420 by 297. So that's what we're going to do to create this A-size title block. All right, so let's start getting everything in position, right? So we're going to go ahead and hit the zoom extents. We're going to switch out of our isometric by selecting this icon here next to it. We should see our cursor should go back right. Let's go ahead and delete these numbers, as we're not going to need them. Okay, let's go ahead and start putting in our A circle, right? our A3 title block. So I'll start off with the rectangle command. Click here. I'll type in 0, 0. It's still going to be my lower left corner. And then my upper right corner is going to be those numbers that I was telling you about before. So it's going to be 420, 297. All right. So let's go find out where that's at. Let's go ahead and hit the zoom extents again. And you can see here's my A-size title block, my A3 size title block. And this is where things get a little bit differently, right? We're going to have to start thinking in metric. So this is when I used to go ahead and offset 0.25, but we have to think metrically, right? So 0.25 times 25.4, which happens to be the magic number to convert things from inches to millimeters, right? So I'll go ahead and use the offset command, and this doesn't have to be exactly that number, because if you do multiply those numbers, you will get something like 6.35. We can just offset 6, and that should be good enough, right? So if I offset 6 to the inside, there's my title block. I'll go ahead and highlight this and create it as a title block, right? I'll go ahead and type in TB. The lower left corner is already at 0, 0. All the other settings are okay. Go ahead and hit OK. And now this should be created as a title block, right? Great. All right, so let's zoom out. And now let's see if we can put these things on the inside of it. Okay, so now that we have our title block created, here's something that you can look at, and what I'm trying to explain what the difference between third angle projection is and first angle projection. And you can see here that this is the normal way that I typically would do my drawings here because I'm in the United States. But if you're doing some international metrics or international standards, this is going to be the first angle projection of way you do things, right? So you've seen that when I created this, everything was created the same. It's just a matter of where you're going to put things at, right? So my front view will be here, my top view will be at the bottom of it, and my right side view will actually be to the left of it. And in our case, what we're going to have is the front view here, we'll have a top side view, and then our section that is calling out between here is going to be on the left side, as well as our isometric drawing will be here at the bottom left, right? So those are going to be your major differences on what you're going to see that when you're doing something that's first angle projection versus third angle projection. Okay, so with that being said, I have my title block here. Let's go ahead and move these objects over there to it. So I have them selected. Let's go to move. And then let's go ahead and put those on the inside of there. Let's go ahead and turn the ortho off. And that'll give me free reign to put this in, right? So let's go ahead and kind of zoom in and take a look at what's happening. All right, so now we can start to compare and see if this is actually big enough for what we need, right? This title block, remember, is an A3 size. Everything in here fits in here just fine. We might want to kind of examine if we can make this a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, kind of depending on how you want to create this drawing. And what I mean by that is if I select it here and then I do a right click, right? And then I bring open my properties window, that's going to open this up. And then I can start playing around with my scale X, scale Y, and scale Z to see if there is something that would fit this, right? Another thing that I can look at here, if I want to use the annotation scale, select the fly up here, and everything is sitting at 1 to 1, right? So these are 1 to 1s, and these are going to get bigger, 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 right? But if I want to go down in the smaller size, this is a half size of that. So I can go ahead and take a look and see if everything would fit on a half scale as opposed to fitting on a 1 to 1. All right, so what I'm going to do is select here, and then let's see what 0.5 does. And I'll click 0.5 for both of these. And then let's see if everything can fit on the inside of this. And I can tell you already, the way that I'm looking at this, it will not actually fit, right? I do have enough room to where I can actually put it in here, you know, and I might just kind of force it a little bit to put it in here just to show you the kind of difference of it. My main concern here is going to be this view here, all right? Okay, so just kind of looking at it, I think let's go ahead and give this a try, and if we need to adjust the title block, we can. All right, so remember that we're going to do this in a first angle projection. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Move. Make sure that you have your ortho turned on. And I'll use this one and move this one below here. And then I will move this to the left, right? So I'll go back to Move. And this is going to be my section view. And I'll move it over here to the left of it. All right. And I'm just going to kind of move these a little bit higher just to adjust everything. All right, and then I'll go ahead and move this all on the inside. So I'm just using one big move, and I'm still using the move command. Let's go ahead and turn our ortho off. Let's pick a base point and kind of move everything to the inside here. And then remember, with your isometrics, you can always scale those down. So I'll select here and I'll go to Scale. And I'm not going to scale it down in half. Let's make it maybe 0.75 and see what that looks like. All right. And move this to the inside. And if I need to, I can also scale this down again. Let's zoom the extents. And we might want to scale that down just a hair more. So let's go back to the Scale command. Go ahead and select your isometric. Enter, pick a base point at this center here, and I'll give it another 0.75. All right, so that looks good enough for what we need to do. Now let's go ahead and put the hatch on here, and we can decide if we want to go ahead and create our layers or things of that nature. So if you want these to be on layers, just go up to the word hatch, up to layers, and then we can create a layer for all of this stuff, right? So we can create a hatch layer. We're going to have to create a phantom line layer. I don't think we have any hidden lines on this one. We're also going to create one that's called center, right? Let's see. So I have a center one, I have a phantom one, I have an extra layer here. Let's go ahead and delete that layer. And depth points come in anytime you use dimensions, and then we have a center one. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and give it a little bit of color just to make sure it show up. So let's make sure our center lines, let's make it a red. And the phantom, let's go ahead and make that green. And then with the hatch ones, I guess cyan will show up really nice. So let's go ahead and choose the cyan color. And then I have to change the line types of two of these. So underneath the phantom one, I'll select the continuous line next to that one. Go to Load. Scroll till I find Phantom 2. Hit the OK button, then select Phantom, then hit OK. That should change that one to Phantom, and likewise with the center one. So I'll select the continuous one here, go to Load, scroll till I find Center 2, hit OK, then select the Center 2, and then hit OK. Alright, so those are all of my things that I'm going to need just to create some simple layers here. Let's go ahead and close this. Now we're ready to go ahead and put our center marks on. So let's first use the center layer command. And then we're going to put that on the send layer. Another thing that I'm going to do is, since I'm here, let's go ahead and adjust this to our 2:1 scale, since we did cut this in half. All right. And now we should be able to put our line types on here. So let's jump over to our annotation, center marks. And then I'll just go ahead and put a center mark on each one of these circles here. Choose the center line. And I'll go ahead and put the gaps between here. And I'll just hit the enter button on my keyboard just to kind of keep repeating the last command here. I'm not going to stretch these yet, because if I go to put the hatch on it, it's going to kind of cause a conflict. So I'll leave them the way that they are. And then I'll kind of keep finishing with my center lines along here. All right. Let's take a look at our hatch layer, right? So let's go back to the home. Let's go to hatch, which is going to be located here. I'll go ahead and place a hatch right on the inside of here. Let's go ahead and make that an ANSI 30. Now you can see that that hatch pattern is created. Go ahead and hit close hatch creation and do that exact same thing again. Go back to hatch. This time I have to go in between each of these. And I'm also going to rotate the angle of these. So when I come down and I find the angle of them, I'll go ahead and rotate this by 90. Now sometimes it's a lot easier just to go over here to the window and just type in 90. Or you can move the slide bar. So either way would accept. Alright, so we have everything done in that one. Go ahead and hit close on this one. Alright, what I'll do next is I'll go ahead and select this hatch pattern here, as well as this one. Click on the home button, selecting the drop down and put it on the hatch layer. Let's go ahead and zoom into this. And what I'll do next is select the squares on here and place it at that midpoint, and I'll do that for all of these, right? So just to keep everything nice and consistent. One of the other things you should have noticed is that I didn't have to change the extension since we are creating this already in a metric format. So we don't have to worry about adjusting the extensions at the end of my center lines because everything is set to metric. If we was doing that in the inches, remember I used to set those to like 3 or 5 is what I usually recommend. But once again, the template is kind of taking over, and understand that we are creating a metric drawing, so it adjusts accordingly. All right, let's go ahead and finish these. Just to kind of accelerate this a little bit more, I'll pre-select them. That allows me to just select the grip and put it down where I need it, right? Make sure that perpendicular is on, otherwise you will have trouble with these ones at the bottom. All right. So now we have our center marks on here. We have our hatches on here. One of the last things we need to do is we need to go ahead and put a, let's see, a phantom line that shows that this is a section. And what else are we going to do? Okay, and we'll start doing our dimensions. Let's go ahead and put our phantom line on here first. The way that I like to do my phantom lines is I'll go ahead and create a line. And let's go ahead and send it right across from here to here. And then I'll go up a little bit, right? Let's go ahead and select each one of these center marks here. And then I'll put the squares on the inside of these squares, right? So this is all that little tedious stuff, just to make sure your drawing comes out correctly. And a lot of times, anytime you're doing AutoCAD drawing, the drafting portion, as far as putting dimensions on and things of that nature, usually takes you the longest time of any. Alright, so with all 3 of those still selected, I'll use my property windows and I'll find the extension left and right, and I'll make both of these numbers 0. Alright, so all that did was just get rid of that extension off of those. Let's go ahead and kind of copy this line over. So I'll select this line here, select the bottom grip, hit the space bar one time, and select copy, and then go ahead and place it here. All right, we might have to extend these lines a little bit further. Let's go ahead and select them, just because they're not extending right outside of what we need them to extend off of. It's easier to select them here, and let's make this number, let's see what 6 looks like. Okay, so 6 does get it outside. All right, go ahead and select each one of these 3 lines here. Use the join command. So I'll go to modify and select join. And then I'll also go ahead and create these while they're joined together and put them on the correct layer, which is going to be that phantom layer. I'll adjust the thickness of that here in a second. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is put arrowheads on this. Now, this might be the easiest way of doing it. Let's go ahead and select or set up our dimension style, and then we'll come back and put these arrowheads on. So, to go ahead and fix our dimension style, another way of getting to it is if you click on the annotation here, and then I'll select the first icon that is located here. Once that is selected, you can see it's on the ISO 25 standard. I'm just going to double click on this annotation one. Go to modify. And then I always start from the right headed to the left, right? So you've seen me do this in other videos. I'll start with my primary units. Let's go ahead and suppress that trailing 0, which we do have. All right. And let's go ahead and take a look at the fit. Our fit is being controlled right now by our annotation scale. Our text height, right now the standard text height is sitting at 2.5, right? You can also see that these dimensions are sitting above it, right? So if that's the format that you want, you can keep them above it, but I like to keep mine all centered, and then I'll keep them all horizontal, right? So that's kind of the way that you're going to control how you want your text to show up. Underneath our symbols and arrows, let's go ahead and turn this to none since we went ahead and put all our center marks that we're going to need to show. Then hit OK. Hit close. Let's go ahead and start placing some dimensions on this just to see how thick or how small these dimensions are. So I'll go ahead and use a radius dimension. Let's go ahead and click here to here, right? And you can see that it does give me the arrow back, and these are just ISO standards. Let's go ahead and finish kind of placing some of these on. So that's my radius dimension. I have another one sitting here. Let's go ahead and place those 2 diameter dimensions on. And most of this stuff you should be able probably to, kind of do this part without my help here. And let's go ahead and place one more here. All right. Now, if these lines are absolutely driving you crazy, go ahead and hit D on your keyboard. So D, enter. This is just the quickest way of getting to the dimension style. Go ahead and hit the modify. And then what we're going to look for here is that we need to go ahead and get rid of that line that's going here, right? That is controlled by here. So if I unselect this, you'll see that those lines will go away. If I hit OK, and then close, it's going to automatically update in my drawing. So if that's something you either want on your drawings or you don't want them, that's going to be totally up to you, but just kind of showing you how to get rid of them. Let's go ahead and move this one over to this side because I can see that it might get in my way. So I'll go to diameter and place that dimension along here. Let's go ahead and delete that one since that's actually a double dimension on that one. Okay. So we have all of these done. Let's go ahead and knock out a couple more here on the inside. We do have a diameter dimension there, as well as one more inside of here. All right, next let's go ahead and take a look at some of these dimensions. I'll start off by creating them linear. I'll give you the height from here to here. Let's go ahead and put a couple of more heights on here. I'm just going to hit the enter button on my keyboard and select from here to here. I can choose the continue option. Let's switch over to the annotation, select continue, and keep going. Remember that when you're using this kind of method, it goes from the last point. Otherwise, you're going to have to use, some other tactic and get into the last point, which is actually built into the command, where you can redefine the first point. Let's go ahead and put a few more dimensions on here. Let's go a linear dimension from that end point to here. Let's see, that's a good overall. Let's go to this one, kind of bouncing around here. Place a dimension from there to there, back to linear, from that endpoint to this endpoint, and I'll make it even with this one, so I'll select this endpoint here. And we're going to show one more height on this one. Let's go back to linear from here to here, because we want that dimension to be on the outside. So go ahead and place it here. I'm trying to just look for other things that I need on this drawing. Let's put a few more linear dimensions on the inside of here. And I'm just going to draw these dimensions on here, right? And I'll go ahead and move these to the outside here in a second. And I'll just go ahead and place them here, right? Now with these dimensions, I can simply select them, and then I'm going to select the center grip there and just kind of move them to the outside. Escape out of that one, do the exact same thing on this one. It's a good practice to keep these numbers out of the inside of your drawing, just so it'll kind of show up a lot more clearer whenever you're creating this, right? Alright, now all I'd have to do is go ahead and start putting my kind of finishing touches on this. I have a diameter, and then we'll go ahead and put the arrowhead that's located on here. So I'll go ahead and select each one of these dimensions, and what I'll attempt to do is go ahead and kind of fix them all at one time, right? So I have my properties window here still open. I'll go to where it says dimension prefix and go ahead and put a %C in front of those, and that should give me a diameter symbol for all three of those, right? These other ones here, let's go ahead and just do these regularly. So I'll use the edit command. I'll just type in ED, enter, and then I have to start typing in how many I have in front of this one. So I'll select that dimension, hit the home button, 2x, give it a space behind it, go ahead and click off of it, and just kind of keep following that same mentality around it, right? So in front of this one, hit the home button, 2x, space, click off of it. And let's see, we have this one here. So it should also have a 2x in front of it. And that should be all of them, right? So yes. Alright, arrowheads. What I usually like to do is I'll go ahead and create just a dimension, and I'm typing in DLI. That's just a shortcut for using a linear dimension. If I choose here, I'll click here, here, and go ahead and place a dimension, right? I'll select this dimension, and I'll show you where the icon for this is at. Go to home, and then hit the explode, which is located here, and that's going to break this up into many different pieces. I'll go ahead and delete, and then delete this line. Then I'll rotate this arrow, right? So I'll go ahead and select it. Use the rotate command. Pick a base point near it. And then go straight up in the air, right? I'll do a left click above it. And then I'll go to scale. Select it. Hit enter. Pick a base point near it. And then you can kind of adjust how you want to scale this thing up. If I'm using metric, usually I'll go 2 or 3 times as big. So let's see what 3 looks. And I like the way 3 came out. Next, I'll go ahead and select it. Go and use copy. I'll use this midpoint in between them. I'll place 1 on that endpoint. Zoom out. Scroll over. Place 1 on that endpoint. Go to escape. Let's go ahead and delete this. Alright, so now that we have these created, let's go ahead and make sure that they're on the same layer. Go ahead and select both of those arrowheads. Select in the drop down here and then choose Phantom. Alright, Let's go ahead and select this line here. Let's go ahead and make it a lot thicker than what it is. Select here. And then I'm looking for the global width. And let's start playing with some numbers here. So 0.5, you can see is a good thickness for what we're going to need to show this line up. Let's go ahead and hit escape. All right, and the last thing we need to do is go ahead and put some text on here, right? Now, we haven't had a lot of videos where I showed you how to use text. There's two different ways of how you can do this. I'll go ahead and look at the style for my text styles, and I'm just going to select this A here, and I'll wait a second for this dialog box to appear. And what you're going to see in here is that we have two different ways of doing this, right? We have a standard method and we have an annotation. Remember, annotation will take the math work or the guesswork out of it for us. And if we're going to use the standard method, we have to do the multiplication. So since I'm doing this whole drawing using annotation, I'll go ahead and double click on here, which makes it the current style. Let's go ahead and choose close. The major difference that you're going to see is that when I use the single line text, it's going to ask me for a point, right? I'll go ahead and tell it I want to use the bottom center, so I'll type in BC here, and that's going to tell it to give me a bottom center start point. I'll click right along this endpoint, and then it's going to ask me what's the paper height, right? So it's going to do the math for me. If I type in 2.5, let's go ahead and make it 5. It's going to automatically multiply that 5 times my scale factor. So if I type in 5, it's going to ask me for a rotation, which is 0 in this case. Go ahead and hit enter, and then type in the letter you want. So I'll type in the A, hit the enter button, and then select off of it. Now hit escape. So it automatically did the math for us on that one. Let's go ahead and copy that. So copy that text. Let's use this top endpoint and place it on this endpoint. All right, kind of coming up below this, I'm going to use that same method here. I'll go back to standard text, right? And this time I'll use that text and I'll make it 7.5. So it's going to do the math for me. I'm going to justify this one by the MC, which is stand for middle center. I'll click, somewhere in the middle of this point. So I'm just tracking off of it to make it here. Text height here, let's make it 7.5. Hit enter. And then hit enter one more time because we have a 0 rotation angle. Now it's ready for me to type. I'll start off by typing %%U, then give it a space. Now I can type in section A-A, give it one more space behind it, do a left click off of it, and then hit escape. All right. So now you see that this drawing is done totally metric. Everything from the beginning to the end. It's using millimeters. And this would be more or less the proper way of doing it if you're strictly using ISO standards. Most of the drawings I was using before, I was kind of combining the two. So this hopefully gives you a little bit more clarity that if you're going to be using metric, it's best to use the metric template first. And then it'll help you set up all your whole drawing. But if you're going to use the imperial, then start off with the imperial template, right? So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you like any of my other ones or you have a comment for me, please leave it below, and I'll see you in the next video.